Hi Frank, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good.
One 32 as of now.
132.
Yeah. So shall we introduce
Oh, I should bring back my mic. Sorry.
It's yours.
Okay.
And the sound is yours.
Thanks. Hi, friends. Welcome. Welcome to yet another virtual meetup of Azure Singapore. In case you want to request any of the meetups or any topics, please feel free to contact the organizers. We have the list here. You can contact me, Saktes, Rivut, or Sentamil, any one of us. You can also find our links to Facebook, Meetup, and the YouTube channel here. We had some very good sessions in the past. So if you were with us last week on Saturday, we had Brandon Burns talk about why we should care about microservices. And you can find the recording of this as well as the other sessions, which I've listed here on our YouTube channel. As for today, we have Ranjit, who will be talking about Kubernetes and how to automate the app deployment. This is the second part of his two-part series. In 2 weeks ago, he did a Docker, the first part, and today is the second part of this. Then at 8, we have Frank Boscher, the cloud advocate from Microsoft. He is joining us all the way from Canada, and he'll be talking about how to use Azure Serverless services in our projects. Then coming up next, we have next week an interesting topic about IoT, how to start IoT projects, and we'll have Christopher Menu, who is also a startup cloud advocate from Microsoft. And then by public demand, we have John Saville coming up again. We had one session from John, I think 3 or 4 weeks back, and it was quite popular. Attendees who attended, they requested John to do a follow-up session, and he accepted this. So we have this private link and Azure Private DNS coming up on 8th of October. Don't worry, in between these two sessions, we also have a couple of sessions lined up. I haven't yet published them on Meetup, but we'll have it published very soon. There is one interesting one which is coming up on 30th of September, and it's about how to go about doing Go development on Azure. So if you have any interesting topic or any specific topic regarding Go that you would like to cover, do let us know. The speaker would like to accommodate these kind of requests because he's still preparing for the session. And then in case you are joining us for the first time, we also have a MVP YouTube channel where not just Azure Singapore, but also the other MVPs who are organizing virtual meetups. We have all the recordings of these sessions available on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to this. Now coming back to today's session, here are some housekeeping rules. When the session is going on, please keep yourself on mute. If you have any questions, please use the raise hand feature of Teams. Or you can unmute yourself when the question and answer session is going on. This session is being recorded, and if you like the contents of these sessions, do help us by spreading about our meetup and about our sessions on social media. With that, I hand it over to Ranjit for the first session. Ranjit, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Nilesh. So I'm going to share my screen first. Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you, Nilesh, for the nice introduction. And today I'm going to present about the Kubernetes. So it's after the Docker. So Docker I presented 2 weeks back, and it's a continuation with that one, because in Docker we create the image and we try to run that image to form a container. But with using the Kubernetes, we try to improvise that one to automate our application deployment. So for the introduction, there is a Kubernetes, and in the short form, there is a 8 characters. So that's why it's a KATS. So that's a short form. And here we are going to look into the Docker recap, because we need to connect the two sessions. So that's why a little bit of Docker recap. And why we need the container orchestration, because before knowing anything, we have to know what was the need, why it came into the market. So that's why we have an introduction about the Kubernetes, about its feature, architecture, and very important is the object, because of the object, it make beautify this product. So we'll go one by one. The first thing will be Docker recap. So as we seen in the last 2 weeks back, we found like there is a Docker file through which we are creating a Docker image, which contains our project jar and its all dependency all together to form an image. Now this image we can spin up into the Docker container, and we can run it anywhere, anytime. And this can be saved into our Docker hub, and through which we can pull and push, and we can build our container. That's why the name tag is the like build, ship, and run any software anywhere. So that's the name tag given for the Docker. And yeah, these are the commands we have seen. Like we have a Docker pull, run, stop, start to maintain all the life cycle of my container. So we are familiar with this one. And going forward, like okay, once we are done with this one, we can spin up our container, and somehow we can maintain a load balancer, and we can put this container downside. We can put this container in the VM, and we can maintain a like a load balancer. So that will work fine. We can maintain a kind of cluster. It's like a normal web application, so we can maintain that one. And but the main question will come, like everything is working fine, but what will happen if one of the node goes down, like one of the server goes down? In that case, like we need to have some process in between, like who can monitor the cluster container, all the life cycle, whether it's running fine, it's not going down, everything. And this maintenance, like this monitoring is okay. This monitoring we can do in our pre-production, but like a non-prod. But who's going to do in the production? Because this kind of health management is not so suitable. And for that one, we have to write so many like Ansible playbook or some kind of script to manage everything, to know the health of my cluster. And in that case, if I have to rescale, I have to regenerate my container. So who's going to help in this one? So in a nutshell, we are not able to deliver our application in a smart way. So it will be something like this. We are delivering the container, but we don't know when it will sync up. Okay, so to overcome, we have a few list of questions like, okay, is it possible to package our application and let someone else manage it for us? Like we should concentrate only in the packaging of the application, nothing else. How it is managed, let other tool handle this one as a dev side. And we should not worry about the management of the container, like how the container is getting managed into my cluster, let somebody else should handle. And we should it should also answer my single point of failure, auto scaling. Like today I have few users, tomorrow if number of user is going to increase, how this auto scaling is going to happen horizontal, especially I'm talking about the horizontal, how the number of node is getting spin up. Likewise, if number of user is getting decreased, how it is going to decrease. So it's like increase and decrease. And especially for the next one is like rolling update, like updating my container without or minimum downtime. So minimum, when I say minimum, means like a kind of 10 seconds delay. So how it is going to do? Because here in the coming like era, we will be we cannot afford the downtime, say like 1 hour, 2 hour. It's not possible. Like when I say like 10 seconds is also too much for us. So for the user, they should not feel like anything is going into production. It's like seamless. And the last one is like have the robust networking, like how they are going to maintain the connectivity between like two container, how they are going to do the communication, intercommunication, cross container, like two container is running in the cross kind of uh, like host, how they are going to make a communication between them, how they are going to persist. So these are the list of question comes when we go for the deployment. Okay, so here like my package is ready, but for the deployment, how we should go for that one. So to answer this one, we have one smart way, a smart tool that is called Kubernetes. Here I have given a picture of orchestrator. So orchestrator is nothing but, as you can see, like there's one person who is known as like commander. So a conductor kind of thing. So he's like I'm just demonstrating this one. Like he's a kind of, he knows the music very well, and he knows like which music has to be spin up, and what will happen if that music is not doing. So that kind of orchestrator he is doing. So similarly, like for the Kubernetes, it's a kind of, it has been used for deployment of my containerized application, scaling my container application, and management of my container application. So he will like it's a kind of tool which will do only the orchestration. So that is the very smart tool. How it is do, how it will do, we'll see further. So before going into this one, just how to create into the Azure cluster, I will go into my Azure. Okay, and I will go for the my resource, create one resource. I'll click over there, and there I will go for the container. I will look for my Kubernetes service. And here there are a few things I need to fill up, like resource group. So I have to fill up the resource group, and cluster name which I have to give, reason where you want to make, and the Kubernetes version. So these are the few things you need to fill up, and how many nodes you want. So by default it's 3. So based on that you can change, and what will be the size of that one, how much RAM, that's all you need to configure. Apart from that, let it be like a default one. And by this one I have created, especially for this one I have created one Kubernetes cluster. So this is my cluster of 2 nodes. So here you can see I have a 2 nodes. And how to verify? There is a cloud shell. I will go into my cloud shell. Okay, I will come into this part later. So just want to show you, this is the cloud shell I'm going to use in my presentation. Fine. So this is the way you can spin up your Kubernetes cluster in your Azure. It's very simple. This is the link, and you are going to make use of your portal. So this is the portal. Like this is the portal you're going to make use. Okay, fine. And afterwards, okay. So here, once you are done with that one, like we'll go into the features, like what all the features of the Kubernetes. So first feature is like it's having the load balancing features, like inbuilt load balancing services is there. So how it is beneficial, like suppose like you have many containers and you want to maintain a load balancing, just like your F5 application, F5 software, for example, like many of the requests is coming how to distribute the load. So that is having an inbuilt feature in the Kubernetes. So we will see in this part, in the demo part. And it has a automate rollback and the rollout. Automate rollback means like you can roll out your application and you can roll back your application within a fraction of seconds. So this is one of the features is there. Next one is your self healing. Like if any of the container goes down, how it will be auto recover. So that is the one of the main feature of the Kubernetes. And this, because of this, it is very highly on demand. Then we have the horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling, if say for example, if the number of users is getting increased, so how the container is getting populated, auto created. So that is one of the feature. Next one is storage orchestration, like all the data produced by your container, how they are getting stored into your host or into your cloud. So that is automated. So that is the plugin is there. So you can make use of that one. And the last one is the bin packing. Like bin packing is the way of mechanism how the container are fit into your host machine. So we will look into this one. There are so many features, but as a day perspective, these are the main feature I have listed down. So we'll go one of them, few of them, like there is a automatic bin packing. So here you can see like I have a host machine. So these are my host machine, and which is having 10 GB of RAM capacity. And these are my, in the left hand side, these are the container. So I have A, B, C, D, E. And this container have certain sizes like 4 gig, 5 gig, 2 gig, 8 gig, 5 gig. So suppose I have to okay, I have to fit this container into my machine, then how it is going to fit? So by default, what we can do roughly, like I can put one each into one each one of my host machine. But how the Kubernetes does, if you are putting in this way, what will happen? Like there will be some space left over in each of them, each of the host machine. And by next time, suppose you have put like 4 gig. By next time, if any of more than like 8 gig or 9 gig is coming, we cannot accommodate, because none of the host machine will be available. So here the Kubernetes is very smart. So what it will do, it will try to accommodate, it will do the bin packing in a very smart way. Like it will see whether the space is available or not, it in very efficient way. So here you can see like I have 2 host machine is still available to accommodate more container. So this is the one way of doing the bin packing, automatic bin packing. Second one is auto scaling. So here you can see like in the left hand side, I have a desired and the actual. So desired means what I expected, actual means how many container is running. So here I have a 2 container is running, but at the same time, if one of the container is running out of memory or it is eating more memory, so what will happen? There is one feature in the my cluster, like Kubernetes, there is one component that is called scheduling. It will look for that one, and very next level, what it will do, it will spin up a new container. So here actual will become 3 and desired will be 2. So here my load into one of the container will go off, and it will do the it will create another container. And if the same thing, like if the it will look for some time, if the health is okay for the next more minute, then it will auto delete this one container, so that the my desired and actual will remain same. So that is called automatic rescaling. Self-healing. Yeah, this is one of the most important. Suppose I have desired is 2, actual is 2. Means whatever expected, I have 2 container, actual is 2 container running. But here one of the container goes off due to any reason. Like this node has gone off, this particular node. So here desired will be 2. As I told you, like there is a scheduling which is looking for that one. It will keep on looking for the my container health. And if this node is not available, then what will happen, like it will try to create another container here to make my desired and actual matching. So this is the best feature, one of the best feature of my Kubernetes, that is called self-healing. Okay, so yeah, coming to the Kubernetes architecture. So this is something like master slave kind of architecture. So here you can see I have a master, and these are the nodes. Nodes is nothing but your like physical or virtual machine, and there I have running a pod. So pod is nothing but it's a container. So here in the Kubernetes we don't run the container directly. We wrap something over there that is called pod. It's very high level of abstraction. So we will look into this pod in more details later on. But for now, you just consider this pod as a container. So we run a pod here, and this full architecture, like full master and slave, becomes a cluster for me. But here in the master side, I don't run any pod in this part. We don't run anything. We just control our node. That is what called master is doing. So that is called like orchestrator is doing over there. Now coming to the this one master in more details, like I have 4 major component in my master. First one is store, that is also called etcd. So this one is something called like it's a kind of database which maintains all the node information needed for my master, because he is going to control my like worker node. So it will contain all the details. Control manager is something like whenever the request come into the like Kubernetes, manager is going to act with the help of my scheduler. So scheduler, as I told you, like it maintains the like what is my actual and what is my desired one. So it will maintain, and which node is getting off, what is the health. So like it is maintained by my scheduler. Like if any node is going down and any node is coming up, so that is maintained within my scheduler. The last one is API server. API server is very important for us like DevOps, because it facilitates to interact our Kubernetes cluster. One more important point, like to deploy anything into my Kubernetes, I don't need to log in into my server. Like this cluster, I don't need to log in. We never touch this cluster anytime. The way we manage, like this is the main important part for us, API server. This is the way of communicating to my Kubernetes cluster. How do we do? There is one tool, kubectl. So kubectl or kube control, what it does, it facilitate our request to the API server using like JSON or YML format. So we put our request here, like is our specification, communicate with my API server, and then later on, like my controller manager will take my request, and with the help of my etcd, like how many nodes are there, and the scheduler, it will deploy. So that is the whole about my master. Now coming to the worker node, as I told you, like it's having the pod running within that one. So there is one kubelet. Kubelet is nothing but it's a kind of you can say it's a kind of agent which is running inside each of my node to communicate with my master. So there is a communication needed for my master, like what is going on. And there is a container runtime for running of my pods. Like if my pod, like it's a kind of image running, so I need a container to run. So that will be like a Docker runtime will be running in that one. kube proxy component to do the communication within the pods, to make a IP of the pod. So within that time, my kube proxy will come into picture to make the unique ID, unique IP for each and every container or pod. So that is what like kube proxy is responsible for that one. So to make any communication related things, kube proxy will be responsible. So these are the major component for the master and the slaves, master or the worker nodes to make the Kubernetes architecture. Okay, and before I go into this one, I would like to go for the this again. I will visit and how to communicate. As I told you, like I have a kubelets, a kubectl. So kubectl, and I will go for my. Okay, before that, I will start my UI. There is one UI available for that one. So I'll just spin up my UI. It will take few minutes. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Now I have to provide a token. Token, how to get the token? So this is my token. So this is my dashboard. It can take accept the configuration or the token. So here I'm putting my token, and this information is very well described in my Microsoft website. I will give you the link because it's a Microsoft product, so you don't have to worry anything about that one. It's all the documentation is very well maintained. So yeah. So here you can see like how many jobs, how many deployments. So this is my web. So through which this will facilitate you to create or delete anything or to scale, rescaling, everything you can do from the this UI. So we will come into this one. I just want to show you. Okay. Okay. So as I told you, like there are certain objects which makes the Kubernetes more interactive. So one of them is the pod. So pod is nothing but it's a group of one or more container. So when this is something called, this is the pod, and inside that one you can see there is a number of containers are there, and it's a layer of abstraction around the container. So directly, as I told you, like container we are not running into my Kubernetes, so we are running a pod. The reason behind that one, because we have to maintain all the volumes, all the resource. So for that one, all the containers within the pod will share the life cycle of the pod. So whatever the life cycle is, start, stop. If I'm stopping my pod, all the container inside that one will be stopped. If I'm starting, everything will be started. If I'm deleting also, all the container will be deleted. So that is the life cycle will be shared across the pod. And all the container will share the same networking, security configuration or volume. So everything will be shared, whatever the my pod is sharing. And here is the command for running my for creating my pod. So this is the simple command. So what I'm going to do for the this one, ctl run, and my image name say like test image, and minus image equal to okay. I'm taking my, say for example, Tomcat. Okay, so here I can see to see the information. So here you can see I have created one pod. By default, it came like one deployment object has been created and one replica set has been created. Deployment object I will explain in the next part, like next one, and replica set also. It's both are the same, like both are interconnected. Okay, so here what I'm going to do, just for this one, I'm going to delete my pod. Papa. Okay, it's getting deleted, and here also you can see my pod is getting deleted. So here one pod has been deleted and second one is getting got created. So that is called auto healing. So once again here. So before it was this was the character, this was the pod name. Now what I did, I deleted the pod. Again, it has spin up a new one. So because of the auto healing property. So how to delete? You will not able to delete any pod like this. So what you have to do, you have to delete the object, deployment object, which manage the actually managing my pod. And it also says how many replica set. Replica set means it's a kind of how many copies of that image you want, how many copies of that container you want. So that is called replica set. So through which you can do. So if suppose if I'm going to delete once again, okay, so now if I come into this part, terminating, okay, and here I can do get all. So nothing is there. Now nothing is there. Okay. Now once again I'm going to create. Say let's say same. Okay, Tomcat. So it's getting created. Okay. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get all. So here we have to understand the terminology, the naming convention. See the deployment, this is the name they have given, and this is the replica set. So they have appended within the deployment, this is the base name, and they have appended some unique character. Now for the pod name, again within that one, they have created a unique character. Now the thing is like, again, I have to, suppose I have to spin two Tomcat one, the same image. So I cannot do using my pod, this command. Kube control and the run test image. By this we cannot do. The best thing is to do with my deployment object. So deployment object is nothing but it is to manage my pods, and it also manage my automatic rollback and the update, rollout and update, self healing, everything. Because of that, I have shown you. I have deleted my pod, but it's not getting deleted because of my deployment. Because in the deployment object, it says like, okay, I need one. My expectation is one, and actual should be one. So since I have deleted one pod, it will try to recreate. So that is the feature of my deployment. Okay, so now coming back to this one. So here in this one, what I'm doing, I am running the same command, but I'm appending a replica. So replica is 3. So here what will happen? It will create one 3 pods and with 3 3 copies replica. And the same thing can be done using my YML file. So this is the way we are going to interact as a DevOps. We are going to interact with my kube control to API server. So this is the way. So this is the format. So here you can see like I have a kind deployment metadata, which is very important to understand. Like this will be something like linking to object. So we will go into services, then we will discover why it is so much important. So this metadata is important, like this label. Now coming to this one, there is a specification. A specification is nothing but it's our need, what you need from this one. So I need this replica means how many copies I need. Another specification for this replica like okay, for this replica, if I have 3 images for this one, what is the container is its array. So what is the name of the container, image name, which port you want to run. So all this is specification, user specification, you are passing to my Kubernetes cluster using my kubectl command. Okay, so we will try to create this one first. Okay, so for simplicity, I have created some of them. For example, okay, so this is the one I have. So here I have like a deployment object. This is the name I have given. This is the label I have given, app1, app v1, and selector is app v1. Okay. And specification, like this is my container. So if I go into my Docker hub, so this is what I want to run, the version 1 I want to run. And Ranjit, yeah, this is the version 1 and the port will be 80. So this is my specification I'm going to provide. So how to run this one? So for running, I need to run this command kubectl and apply -f, because I'm going to give my file deployment 1. So this object has been created. Now need to verify deployment object. So see, deployment 1 has been created, because here I have given deploy 1 is the name. So deploy 1 has been created. I will go into my pods. Okay, before that, replica set. So replica set I have given only 1, I guess. Yes, 1. Okay, so that's the reason. Now if I go into my deployment once again, and I will go into my edit, and here I have given replica 1. Say I am going to give replica 2 update. Internally, what it will do, it will fire the same command, kubectl apply -f specification. So same thing. So it's going to redeploy. And pods, you can see it's spin up. So here deploy 1, and this is my replica set. So I need to understand, okay, this is my replica set, and it will group together the my pod with the same replica set name. So here this is the one pod and this is the second one. And to identify, you can see like deploy 1, this is the name, this is the replica set name, and this is my pod ID. So all together clubbed together, has been clubbed together. Okay, and fine. Now everything is working fine. Now I am able to spin my container. Everything is working for me. Now the big question, how to access my application? Because okay, I can say my container is running, but I need to access from outside also. So this is the scenario. So this is my say like working machine, which is hosted, which is having the IP address in this range 192.168.1.0. And this is my node where is my IP address is same thing. And this is my container, but its range is totally different. So here I cannot access directly because the IP range of my working system or my node is same, but even though my container is totally different. So I will not able to do what the best I can do. I can do the SSH, and through which I can access my application. But I don't think like anybody would like to do with this kind of scenario. So our requirement will be like there should be some way of communication, like middleman kind of thing, which can take my request and put my request to my container, and likewise it can serve my response also. So something like middleman. So is it possible? So the answer will be yes, using the service object. So service object, what it does, like it's very helpful to doing your communication between your working system, like your outside the cluster and within the pod, like within the cluster. So what it does, like for example, here it has open a port like 30,005, and there is a service object. So whatever the service is coming to this port, it will read this port and it will pass over to my cluster. Likewise, how it is doing, like this is the way, one of the way, and this is known as like node port. This is one of the type, like service type is called node port. So what it does, it will open a virtual port 30,005. There is a range, actually 30,000 to 32,000 something is there is a range you can define, and within that range you can put your like which port you want. So whatever the request it will come, it will sense that request. It will then service object will take this request and it will put this request to my AT&T. It's just like port forwarding. So here I'm doing through the node port. That's the reason it's called node port. I'm opening a node within a port, I'm opening a port within a node. That's why it's called node port. So this is the one of the way. The other way, like service type we have, like as I told you, like it's opening a port within a node. So that's why it's called node port. The other way is like cluster IP. So here it will create a virtual IP within a cluster to do all my communications. So that is called cluster IP. One of the best way, the last one, like load balancer. So what it does, like it will it will act as a load balancer. So here, if my cluster is like, if my container is running, so many containers running, to overcome the load, it will try to distribute my load to the different container using my load balancer type. So this is one of the way. So how it is going to do? Okay, so here what I have done. Okay, so this is my service YML. So what it does, like it has some metadata, its own metadata as we see one. So this is the name I have given. And in this specification, what I said, like, okay, port is my 8080, target port is my 8080. So to coming to this picture, this is my target port 8080. Okay. And it will be listening to my port. Port means nothing but this port, service port 8080, which is same. And it will be making use of my type load balancer. So there is no additional port over there. It will make use of my type load balancer. And what because there will be so many container running within that one. So how to identify? Selector will be app v1. So that's the reason I told you, like, label is very important for the Kubernetes object. So it will sense my label as app v1. Okay. So all the request, whatever is coming to this one, it will try to redirect to this container because those are tightly bound now. So I will try to create this service object. So kubectl create, or I can say apply -f service YML. So now my service has been created. Now we will see get all. Okay. So here I can see my service has been created, load balancer, and my external IP, it has given my external IP, meaning whatever the request is coming to this one, it will go to my external IP and it will try to redistribute to my like respective container. So at a time there will be only one container will be approached. For example, I have many containers running. So at a time only one pod or container will be approached to do my request. Okay, so what I will do, I will take this one and kt. So my application is running. Okay, fine. So this is the one way of doing my deployment using the load balancer. Now the second thing which I would like to show you about some of the uh, properties of rollback and the rollout. So what I'm going to do, I will take my deployment object cat and deploy it to YML. So here everything is same. This file is same, but instead of having the version 1, I'm doing the version 2. Okay. So I'm going to apply this one kubectl and apply -f and deploy to. Okay. So it will try to reconfigure that one. So what will happen? Pod. Okay. And here I have the same thing. Okay, one. Okay, it's running. Okay, and now we'll verify this one. Get all. Okay, so now my replica set is deployment 1 is there. Okay, and what is the name I have given? Deployment 1. Okay, fine. And this is my replica set. And here you can see it's terminating. And this is the earlier one is getting terminated and new one is getting running. So this is called rolling update, meaning it will deploy my container successfully unless until my container, the new container is not getting started, it will not destroy or terminate my old container. So that is called rolling update. And this is one of the best feature I can feel myself, my personal experience to automate. Suppose I'm doing the automation, so I will deploy my new one, and for the sanity purpose I will check my version. What is my version? If version is matching with the new one, this means like my deployment is successful. If it is not matching, this means something happened wrong. So okay, so this is okay, fine. So here you can see like one pod is running. Now the earlier has been removed, one pod is running, and this is the desired one, the replica set. This is the new one, 6.6, because I'm referring this one. Yeah, 6.6 replica set. The earlier replica set has been gone. There is nothing like desired and current, so 0. So there is no expectation, nothing is running also. So this is called rolling update. Now coming to the rollback. So this is one another feature, rollout. History and deploy. I will give my deploy one name. So it will give me how many rollout I have done. So there are two rollout. One is for version 1 and another is for version 2. So, okay, just to verify my application. Yeah, version 2 is there. So version 2 has been deployed. Now I will roll out because somehow like okay, my client says no, you have to roll back. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do undo. Okay. Okay, roll out. Sorry, there is no stream command. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to roll. See, like it has been rolled out. Now here also we can see what happened. Like okay, kubectls get all. So terminating, the old one is terminating, new one is getting. So it's getting rolled back. Again, if I have to see the feature, history 1. Okay, so I can see my revision is 2 and 3. Before it was 1 and 2, there is 2 and 3. Suppose there are number of revision is too much. You want to go for the specific one, there is another flag called for the undo. There is called like 2 revision. So it will jump into that particular revision. You can give your name, number actually. So this is the one way of doing the deployment application, your container application in a smart way. And I should go for this Kubernetes as per this. So that's the reason I have given this introduction about the Kubernetes. So this is very high level. There are so many things. For example, like there are secret file, configuration file, how to manage that one. So there are so many things need to go with like Kubernetes. There is nothing like you are compromising with anyone. No, there is like everything is facilitated. And the best part is like as I told you, like you don't have to go and directly go inside your cluster. You're directly managing your with your interface kubectl. So that is one of the way. So yeah, that's the thing. I'm done. Nilesh.
Yeah. Thanks, Ranjit. There is one question on the YouTube stream. How to get Kubernetes dashboard set up? Any third-party tool used? And the person Money RV is asking for your advice on this.
Okay, so by default there is a add-on available after 1.18. So there is a add-on available for this one dashboard. We just need to do some configuration. There are 3 steps need to be done. So first one is browse, and second one is this is important one. The second part. Okay. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to create this object, and you have to specify your user. This is important because otherwise in your configuration, in your namespace, this will not pop up. So that was to give the user specific permission. We are using this one, cluster user. And after that, as I told you, like to successfully go into my cluster, like a dashboard, I need to generate my token, because this token is for temporary. So this will help me to give my token. So this token you have to take and do the copy paste, and likewise you will be able to do. So 3 steps basically. So one is the browser, which will give you the connectivity, and second one is to give the namespace. Third one is to give your token. That's all.
Okay. I don't see any question in the chat here. From the attendees, do you have any questions for Ranjit? Looks like there are no further questions.
Yeah.
Okay, there is one. How to use Rancher for AKS?
This I haven't used. Sorry, Rancher I haven't used.
Okay. I think that's all we have in terms of the questions. Rivut, is there anything on the Facebook stream? No. Okay, fine. Thanks, Ranjit. Thanks for this session. So we are still like 10-12 minutes ahead of time. But since we already have about more than 25 people joining here on the Teams, and there are about 10 to 12 people on the YouTube, let's get started with the second session. Ranjit, you can stop sharing your screen.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Let me share my screen.
Okay. All the best, Frank.
Yeah. Okay. So the second session today is how to use Azure Serverless services in our project. The speaker is Frank Boscher. He is a cloud advocate from Microsoft. So those people who joined a little bit late, he's joining us all the way from Canada. And over to you, Frank. Without wasting any time, I think people are waiting more than me to hear you. So let's get started.
Excellent, excellent. So I'll share my screen right away. Oh, yeah, boom. Cool. Okay, so bonjour, hi. Thank you for attending to this session about serverless. So today I want to share with you what is serverless. We'll talk about Azure Function. We'll talk about Logic App, because I think Logic App is very, very powerful and is maybe a little bit less popular, sounds maybe less sexy than Azure Functions. So we'll present the two. We'll present also how they could work together. And if I have time, I will share to you different projects that are available online that use one of those two services. If after the sessions, you have a questions, because if you're like me, during the session I have no questions, and as soon as the session finish, oh yeah, I should have asked this. So I'm reachable online at F Boucheros on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I have a few YouTube channel. You could go there. On LinkedIn, I have a Twitch channel where I stream a few times every week, and also I have a Facebook page that the name is different, but is still available over there. So feel free to reach out. I will be super happy to answer any questions you have. So like I said, today what I want to show you is I want to understand the serverless, why we should care, how they are useful, how we can use them, all those little things. We'll build a very simple logic app just to see how things are working. We'll also build an Azure function. I will use JavaScript, but I can show you simple if we have time. And like now that I have 10 more minutes, maybe I will be able to show you even more code if you're interested. So it's very easy. There's multiple languages supported in Azure Functions. And I will also we'll connect those two things together to see how we can make them working together. So very interesting. And I will show you, we won't deploy them because it could take a lot of time, but I will show you different way that you could deploy directly from your repository. And in this case, I will use GitHub, but of course it's all possible to do most of the same thing on the Azure DevOps if you're using Azure DevOps. So let's get started. Usually that I look at the crowd now, but I don't see you. But I will assume everyone is ready. If you're interested, I will share links at the end of the session. If you're interested to have the slides, I will share them also at the end. So, serverless. When developer, I don't know for you, but I am a developer. So the first time I heard about serverless, I was like, yes, no more server. I only care about code. That's done. Yes, questions? Sorry. Yep.
Do you want to adjust your mic a little bit? I think your voice is coming a bit lower.
Is it better this way?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Sorry, the PowerPoint was taking all the screens. I couldn't see you. We'll put that here. Excellent. So serverless, I was like, yeah, no more server. Fantastic. I don't want to think about server. And then, you know what? I realized, whoa, a minute. I should relax because when I read serverless, I should instead read, now I'm not in my PowerPoint. I should read less server. There's still server, of course. We're in the web, so there are server. It's just that we don't need to take, to think about them. They are very useful. Like IT people now, if there are some in the audience, are like, what? Server are super useful. VMs, it's everything. Yeah, that's totally fine. But I have a developer focus, so I care more about the code than the machine it's running on. And I think like it's okay. Both, you should. It's fine if you like servers and VMs, but I care about code. So less server, because when we start, if we could just get back a little bit, when we start, it was on-prem, all your fathers used to say, it was that easy, the server was under the desk of the CEO, super secure, nobody can reach out there, and all the code was there, it was simple back then. Not sure, because when you have a new project, you had tons of questions. How many, what's the size of the next server? How many memory do I need? Do I need the connection? Who will take care? What if a drive is failing down in the middle of the night? There are so many questions to answer. And if you order the parts and pandemic arrive, then yeah, it could be a little bit longer to have your pieces if it's still possible. So that's why then we move and we create VMs. IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So, and you have VMs locally if you want. So you can still have your server, a big machine, and have multiple virtual machine inside of it. And that's totally fine. Or you could use the cloud and have VMs running in the cloud. And that's also very nice. But you still need to think about the size of the VM, and then you need to scale it and maybe create some gold image so you could reproduce them easily if something happened to your VM. So you still have a lot of maintenance to do. So we say, okay, let's go with platform as a service, PaaS. And that was a little bit better because now with PaaS, we don't need to think about the VMs, but we still need to maintain and decide, what's the the OS that is running on my service. You need to plan the Scaling, it is very easy. Don't get me wrong. I love PaaS, but we still need to plan a little bit more. Then we thought about serverless. So serverless, what it is, it's just a piece of code. So it's code focused or event driven. You don't need to think. The server are still there, but it's an abstraction of the server. You don't need to think about them. You just have your code or your event or your workflow that is there. That will be triggered. We'll see more in detail later, but it will get started or executed at some point automatically. If there's a lot of demand, it will scale up and down, always be able to answer to the demand. And when you're done, it will just vanish. Boom. And the beauty of it is it's micro billing. So if you do a good job of optimizing your code, it is very, very, very budget friendly because you pay only when the service is running. So if it's not running, it doesn't cost anything. If your code is, for example, in Azure Function, if your code run for 36 seconds, well, you pay for 36 seconds, not a minute, not 5 minutes, not an hour, just 36 seconds. And then Logic App is different. It depends on how many nodes, but it's also very, very cost efficient. So that's always a good news because we like usually the money to stay in our pocket. So, serverless is very good for that. Does it mean it's good for every situation? Should we move everything at serverless? Probably not. It is good for many different scenarios. We'll cover a few of them later on. And yeah. So Azure, of course, Azure, the Microsoft Cloud, offer different services in the serverless offering, if I could say. So the most popular or the most known is Azure Function. Azure Function is code-based kind of thing, so it's really a piece of code. You don't think about a huge solution and everything. It's just like a piece of code, a function like in JavaScript or C#, like just a little snippet of code that execute and return something. Again, we'll get more in detail later about the function. So there's also Logic App. Logic App, it's a little bit more workflow based. So it's a connection. It's very well known in the integration area where you're trying to connect different applications. Maybe if this then that on the web. It's a service that is very popular. That could be used for free, and where you cannot, let's say, every time someone tweet this, then do that, or blah, blah, blah. Then if you compare Logic App to that service, then Logic App is if this, then that on steroid. It's so much powerful. And there's also Power Flow. They changed the name so many times. There's something very similar in Office 365. It was called Flow. Now I think it's Power... I forgot the name, but there's also a service in Office 365 very, very, very similar. In fact, is built on top of it, very useful, very user friendly. And then there's Event Grid when you need to scale. Let's say you have like your building connected car and you want to send tons of messages to a Logic App or an Azure function and something like that in IoT. You need something to scale to be able to absorb and get all those messages, so you could use Event Grid. And of course, there's multiple other services, and all those things are all working together very well with any database in Azure. Of course, the storage, the security is embedded into that. That's very nice. You could use Azure Active Directory into that, so you have a very secure way to communicate to those services. You could connect with all those other services. So very, very well structured. And of course, you have plenty of tools for developing because, we are still developer. Well, at least I am. So I'm very happy to know that I have plenty of tools. There's a solution in Visual Studio that you could create new projects in Visual Studio Code. I'm using it a lot these days when I'm streaming and stuff like that. It's very easy now to create even Logic App in there. It's integrated with Azure DevOps. You could run it locally. That's pretty cool. You can monitor and see the debugging. Like there's a lot of information there to help you building, have a best experience before, during, and after, because you know everything will be running smoothly and it will not cost you a fortune. So Logic App. Logic App, you know, Microsoft loves acronyms, so PaaS was not long enough. So they had HiPaaS for integration as a service. So Logic App is part of that integration as a service. And it's very, very, very fast to build something in there. There's like you could have some code if you want, but it's really a workflow. So it's little boxes and connectors and things like that. And it's very well structured on that. So it's more workflow, codeless kind of thing. And it will have tons of triggers and actions. Connects to many different applications, data, services, everything. Come on. So this is what a workflow look like. So like you can see here at the right of the screen, there's a trigger. That's the first box at the top. This one is recurrent, so it's a little timer. So let's say every Monday it will run, initialize a few variables, run a query against document DB. If he found anything, then it will execute other tasks, call, you know, tweet something and blah, 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 blah. So you could do many different trigger. It could be time trigger, could be web host. Well, today I will use that because it's easier to display. So we'll just have a URL like an API that we'll be calling from the browser. But there's plenty of services. Personally, I use a lot of the time the one from when a new file is created in my OneDrive. So if I drop a text file or something like that, it trigger a Logic App and generate some content, crunch, process the data, and then inject that in other system. I will give more example later on. And like I said, Logic App is connected to, of course, all the Azure services, but also other application like SAP. Sorry, I was trying to remember the long name, but the SAP and all the other services, Oracle, connector, all the connectors. In fact, you're connecting to another application via connectors. And a slide that used to be very funny to present was the slide where we're presenting all the connectors, and it was never up to date because it was always new connectors. And these days you could even create your own connectors, and that's pretty cool because when, let's say, you're building an application or a service and you would like other developers to build their application using your services, by building a connector, you could publish them inside the Azure marketplace. And then as a developer, I could get that connector and use it in my application, in my Logic App. So very, very cool. So let me show you, enough slides. Let's jump into the Azure portal. I want to show you what it look a Logic App, and we'll just have some fun with it. So we'll go inside where is it? Here. Not this page. This page. I was sharing my full screen, right? You see now my Azure portal? I'm assuming yes.
Large screen.
So this is the Azure portal. So portal.azure.com. No, this is my OneDrive. This is the Azure portal. So portal.azure.com. Of course, you need an Azure subscription if you're using Logic App. Like I said, if you are a user of Office 365, there's something called Power Apps. No, not Power Apps. I forgot. It was Flow before. Power Connection. I forgot the name of it. To create a new Logic App, you could click that red plus in the corner here, search for Logic App. What? Why are you not showing? That's funny. I doesn't like my S. Okay, no plural, just one logic app. And then you click create. You will answer just a few little questions, like, you need to put everything in a resource group. So you create a resource group, give it a name, specify the location. So try to make it closer to your data or other services, so latency will be faster. And of course, if it's too far away, you could even have a little bit extra charge because data will be transitioning between different data center. And once you're done, because I have already one half cooked, if I like any good TV cook show, so I have one here. You'll arrive in this structure where you have a logic app. You have plenty of option here. Let's give us more room. So you have tons of option available here. I don't like that. I'm not full screen. Anyway, all the option here. And if you want to go and see a little bit more about it, you could just go and edit it. So I cannot edit it right now. Why? Refresh. Okay, now I can edit. So here it is. That's my logic app. It is very simple. What I did, I just decided, like I mentioned, that I want to have a HTTP trigger. I could have select tons of different triggers. I use HTTP trigger when I demo because it's very convenient. You could also, like I mentioned, have when a new file is created in a drive, when a new record is in a database, maybe when someone tweets, if you're in a company, you want to see you're doing an event, you want to see if the feedback is good on the social media, so you could monitor the social media and look for a specific hashtag and ingest that. So you could all do that. So what happened then when my trigger is fire my logic app? It will go and create a file. So let's see here, create a file, and it's connected to my OneDrive. I could have used Dropbox or all the other. I just used OneDrive because it was easier for me. So I have in OneDrive a folder called Serverless Demo, and I will create a file here. And here the name of the file will be test, and then UTC now. And you notice that this is like, it's not regular text, it's a little box. And same thing here, it will say bonjour, and then it's a function concat something something. So those information come from a dynamic content here. And that's very useful because logic app for every actions is aware of the previous steps. So every time it will suggest you information about the previous steps. So right now, if I look here, I have, if we notice this logo here with the little kind of planet, it's the same logo that I have here. And I have information about the body of my trigger, the header of my header, the query, like query string, in a URL when you pass parameter, like, interrogation point, value, equal, and like you have all those things, and the path of the parameter. So you could use those information to create more information. And if you change tab, so here, the second tab, I could go expression, and now I have like the concat that I use. So concat will, like any concat that I'm sure concatenate different string. I could, do length. I have plenty of expression, if, equal, tons of them. So here I'm using exactly that. But since this is an HTTP call, I also need to return a response. So let's add one more steps before testing this logic app, and we'll add a response. So what I could do is add a step here, just click the button, and now I'm saying, okay, what do you want? And it's, suggesting me based on the context, maybe what I'm my regular action that I click or whatever. I could see more, I could see all of them. It will just list a few of them. built-in standard enterprise, because you could use enterprise. There's an enterprise account that you could create that will give you a lot more possibilities. And you could create your own custom also here if you want. But for now, let's say I just want a response. There it is. So little planet response request, that's exactly what I want. We'll click on that. And now it's okay, status code 200. So 200 is okay, right? If I want to return an error, maybe I have a more complex logic app and I have a condition at some point, and for some reason there's a security issue or something like that, I could return 500 or like another kind of exception if I want. But here, assuming that, since my app is not doing a lot of stuff, I'm pretty sure it will be successful. So I will just return a 200, and I could return something. So what I could return is, let's say I would like to return the name of the file that was created. So I could say, we created the file, and then let's put the name. So here again, at the left in my dynamic menu, here I see I still have, like previously, the information about my trigger, but now I have those the blue one, that are my OneDrive action. So now I have information about those. And if I look carefully, I should find file name somewhere. I have name. So that's perfect. So name of the file or folder. So I will just use that. And now here in my action is we create the file name. So that will return the file name. Cool. So now I need to save it, because still need to save it. So that's very nice. That was kind of easy. But you say, Frank, that's cool, but like I don't want to work all the time in the browser, or like what if I want to copy paste very quickly, or how can I version and keep different version of this logic app? Can I make it closer to my API so they match all the time? So if my APIs or application is changing, my logic app will also change, because I could take a screenshot, but this is not very convenient. The beauty of it is all that, in fact, is a JSON file. And you could see that by clicking here. Since the beginning, I was in the designer mode, but here there's a code view. So you could, if you click on that code view, now you see that it's just a JSON file. And I think my screen is a little bit, no, 125. I feel like it's tiny. So here I have, like, it's all a JSON file. Like here we see the, it goes in the folder path looking, and it will create a file named test with the UTC here, Monday, hour, minutes. We see here just the response that we created. That's the thing we just added together. So like the input will be, okay, the file is created, and we see here that there's a app signs saying, okay, this is not text anymore, this is code, and it's body, because it will go fetch from the body of create file. So create file was the name of my object previously connected to my OneDrive. So I say, okay, you know what, go in this object and get the name, the property name, if exists. This is why I have an interrogation point here. If it exists, return this, and the value per status code will be 200. So now, if I would like to run that, I could, use any kind of a tool like Postman or Insomniac or anything. But since it's just a URL, let's copy this URL here. We'll paste it in my browser. And one thing I forgot to show you is when I create the file here, I'm waiting for a parameter named salutation inside the query string. because that's a very easy way to pass information, right? When you're doing a demo, in reality, it could have been like a database, you go there and blah, blah, blah. But, since I'm just doing a demo, I will pass the information through the query string. So I will add a variable named salutation in my query string. So the way to do that, since I already have a few variables here declared, I will just add another one. So we'll do the not the at, I don't know, this emp, I forgot the name of that variable, that character in English, I'm sorry. And I will add salutation equal, and let's say Frank. I'm running this. It's spinning. Of course, it takes forever, so I can, internally panic here because I'm doing a demo. Come on, should take 2 seconds. Why are you taking so long?
It's completed.
Error. Excellent. Timeout. Yeah, of course, timeout. Salutation. I don't know why it created an error. Should reply in split a second. I run it before the did I do any typo here? Blah, 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 blah. Response. Yeah, should all be good. It's a get. Improve traffic flow. Yeah, no, it should be working. Okay, wow. It just took forever. Of course, when you are live, I tested 2 seconds ago and it was good. So we receive our message, we create the file and the time, so that's cool. So now if we go in my OneDrive, that was the first folder here, now we have a new file and the name is matching, of course. And if I look into it, I have my message, bonjour, here is the message. Very boring message, and I know, but now we understand that it's very easy to create a logic app. So cool. So now we have our first logic app done. So let's delete that. We don't need it anymore, and it will be less confusing later on. So let's go back to the slides. So that was cool. That was a very, very, very simple logic app. But now let's talk about Azure Functions. So Azure Functions, like I mentioned a couple of times, it's some event, here represented by that lightning bolt, and some piece of code. So when you merge that together, you have the logo of Azure Function. So why Azure Function? Why should you care? Why do you want to use it? Well, it supports, like I mentioned, many different languages: C#, Node, Python, JavaScript, PHP, PowerShell, Bash, tons of different language, and it's very useful. And more are coming. I think they have some experiment with Rust, and other also Go is coming, I think. There's multiple in progress, like it said. And of course, when we are coding, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? So a lot of time we're using different libraries. So it support natively NuGet for getting any package or NPM. So from the basic, you just reference your library you like or your package, call it as you want, depending on which language you're using, and it will just get those versions and your application will be running. And you could even, if you want, call an exe or DLL directly from inside the Logic app. Sorry, an Azure function. So very, very, very convenient. And it will be able to get triggered by so many different things. And you'll also be able to bind information directly from the Logic app. So if you're using a storage table or like I said, the different file, you could just directly bind your trigger on it and the information will be updated. So very, very interesting. And it will scale automatically also. Azure Function is an open source project. So you could go at github.com/Azure/Azure Functions, and you will see the code over there. And even some functionality was done by MVPs. So they accept they accept PRs, pull requests, right? So they have a bunch of feature there possible, and so you could participate and see what's happening over there. So it is open source. So that's one more reason to find this tool very appealing or interesting. So let's go and create an Azure function just for fun. So we'll this time go here. So again, to create an Azure functions, you will click the create resource and you search for functions. You have function app, you click there, you create your function, give it a name, a location, and stuff like that. And you should land something like here. Again, let's minimize this so I have more room for the function app. So function app is kind of the container for the functions. You will see here you have a lot of information. You have a Git repository in there. You have a lot of, if you want to have, I mentioned previously, you could have authentication. If you want your function to be executed as an application, like a user, have credential and this specific permission. Here in the left option, you have authentication authorization. So you could connect a user, a app user, or a service principal, if we use the language of Azure Active Directory, correctly binded to your Azure function. So you could give a lot of permission, less permission to access to connect other services and not have any credential hard-coded anywhere. You also have the application insight that is able to read. So if you want to monitor your Logic app, see how much time it turns, how much time it's spent to process your data, or how many times it was called in the past hour. If you have any trouble and you want to, investigate what's happening, you have application insight that will help you to extract all those information. But right now, there's nothing. We don't have any function. Here I am in the function and I have no function. So let's create a new one. So we'll click here the add button. And of course, right now I'm doing it in the portal, but you could totally do that from different tools. And I will show you later how we could do that from Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. So here you have plenty of new function. So like we'll be using the HTTP trigger, but just let's pass and review the others just for fun. So time trigger is another one that I found very useful. For example, I use that in one of my scenario where I have a function that runs every Monday. And this function execute a Azure Resource Graph query on my subscription and return me all the resources that are expired. And expired is just a tag. And so in fact, the query check for a tag expired on with a date that is in the past. Because I create a lot of resource when I'm doing demos, and sometimes, I'm human, I forgot to delete them. So to avoid having surprise at the end of the month, I have this thing running every Monday to clean up my Azure subscription. And I give to this Azure Function a lot of power, because I said, you know what, if you find any resources that are expired, just delete them. The source of this project is in GitHub, so you could even use it if you want. It's very, very useful. It could be doing backups of a database. It could be, you know, cleaning, running reports, tons of stuff. It's very, very useful. You have service bus, storage. I use that also sometime. So you have a lot of connector that already exists. But for now, let's go HTTP trigger. HTTP trigger 1 sounds like a very good name, and you have different authorization level. Function anonymous admin. Since I am doing a demo, I will use anonymous just to make it a little bit more simplistic, but in real life situation, you should use at least a token. So functions, the way it will work, you will need to pass a security token. So it will be code equal, and then like a long string, you pass that. So it's at least one level of security. Better will be to use identity or something like that, but you know, worst case, you should use that security. So, you know, do what I said, not what I'm doing. So we'll create one. Because I created inside the portal, it is in JavaScript, so I could see here the code. So it is a very simplistic function. So it will look for a parameter name inside the query string, or if I'm calling it from like a tool, different things where I can pass some like a JSON document, a JSON object in a body, it will look for inside the body for something name, and then it will response, building a message, say hello, and then pass the name. And this is the trigger has been successfully executed, and return, of course, the 200, just like we did before. Interesting part, in the portal, you could even run it or test it. So if I'm running with a post, because it was supporting both method, right? This query here will be for a get, and here will be by a post. So if I say post, then here I don't need the key, but you know, fine. I don't need to pass any parameters, and the name will be Azure, or I could say, you know, Singapore. And if I run it, I have my response, hello Singapore, HTTP trigger was executed successfully. So that's wonderful, it worked. But that's cool, like it's in the portal, but I could also run it just like my Azure function from the browser. So if I here get the function URL, I have here, I will take the URL and I'll execute it. And of course, I will have my error message, right? This trigger is executed successfully, but you need to pass a name property to have a personalized message. Okay, because right now I didn't pass anything in the query string. So I just need to add a property. So since it's the first one, it's the interrogation point. We'll add name, and I will say Frank here. Whoops. And now I have hello Frank. HTTP trigger function executed successfully. This word is hard to say for me. So now we know it's working. Perfect. In real life, we don't code from the browser. Well, I don't know for you, but I know for me, not really. Like I would try, I will play, I will have some fun, I will investigate, I will try the first time. You know, of course, the first time you create anything, a VM piece of code or something, Perl is very useful. But then in real life situation, we will be deploying from a repository, GitHub, Git, or Bitbucket or Azure DevOps or other repository. So let me show you two different ways that you could use to deploy your code or your solution from a repository. So we'll go back here and have a GitHub. So that's the repository where all the code that I did, the demo, is available. So you will have all that if you are interested after. Okay, so here in that repository, I'm using two ways to deploy. So the first one that I really like is those magic button here. So this is very useful if it's an open source project, a solution you wish other deploy. Not necessarily you are deploying that for your personal usage, but more like, hey, you want to try, give it a try. You want to try my solution, my project. Click here and it will open everything. So if I click this button, it will open a new tab. It will ask me to connect into my Azure subscription. Well, since I was already connected, it didn't ask. Let me zoom a little bit. And then it will ask me a few information. It asks me, of course, creating an Azure, selecting an Azure subscription, creating a resource group, and then have the parameters section. And this, all those information I need to provide. So it's asking me, okay, what's the base name, the GitHub branch, the URL, expired on, and owner name. So all those parameters are not, how can I say that, like regulars. It's not something like region, yes, but base name, GitHub branch, like expired on, like that's not something you see everywhere because they are custom. So let's see how they are defined. So in fact, when we look at this button, it's calling a method from the portal and will pass an ARM template, Azure Resource Manager template. So it's a way to define an architecture as code. So if I go back to the root of my project, and if I go inside the deployment folder, I will have here a file called deploy Azure. And if we look into that, that's not what I want to do. I'm going to zoom. Voila. So this is the definition of what I want to deploy. And here I have a section parameter, and I'll have base name, GitHub branch, GitHub URL, expired on. And this is the property that I define, and I put metadata to have like exactly the information, like specify the type of that thing. So everything is defined here to help me deploying my solution. And that's the information I need. And after that, I will have all my object, my resources defined. So if we look here in the list of resources, I will have Azure function app here. Like they use the same backend as a website, but they are kind of function app. If I look further down, I have a logic app somewhere. That's my storage, and I have here, I think, workflow. So that's my logic app, and I deployed two of them because they have one half done and one completed. So you know, if I need to rush in my demos and stuff like that, I could just use the last one. So like this is not like a regular ARM template because every resource is kind of there twice. But you know, like it's a definition and declare everything. It looked very impressive, but remember that it was built little brick by little brick. So that's a way to deploy. Maybe you want to deploy something for yourself. Build a integration, CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. So every time you push something, the solution will be compiled and deployed. In GitHub, that works with the GitHub action. And here, if we look, I have a GitHub action, and it's a CI to dev. And the way GitHub works is it's a workflow, a series of actions that will be defined in a file in a GitHub folder. So again, if I go back to the root, here I have my GitHub workflows. So that's where my GitHub action will be defined. So let's have a look, see how we could do that. So I have a file, and it's a YAML file. That's how the definition is declared. And let's have a look a little bit. So here in my definition, say, okay, it will get trigger on every push action. I could say push PR, like I define what I want to use. And there's documentation. I invite you to go look in the definition. It's you have links on the top of the screen. And then I will build and deploy. Okay, so this workflow is compiling and then deploying. I will use Ubuntu latest. So if I need a specific image to compile my stuff, maybe I need third party or something like that, then I need to specify exactly the VMs or the container where my stuff will be compiled. And then I will check out master, because in this repository I didn't change and set main, so it's still master. I should have changed it. And after that, since it's a demo, I comment a lot of stuff because I'm not using everything. But let's say I was using .NET Core. I could just add .NET Core environment, specify the version I want, and then compile my solution. But here I am in JavaScript, so I don't even need that. I just need to deploy, right? There is no compile. It's very simple JavaScript, so I can skip that part. I don't need it in my case. But you know, if you're in .NET, if you're functionware in .NET, you need to first compile and then build, and then don't forget the publish. So it will go in the My App, and then you will be deploying from My App to Azure. But in our case, let's zoom in a different area here. In our case right now, we just need to deploy. So here, say, you know what? I need to log in. So I'm using login. I'm using the secrets. Oops, sorry, that line was not very straight. I'm using the secrets. Secret is a property of GitHub. I will show you where it is. And I'm looking for the variables Azure credentials. So that will be passed to the method Azure login, pass the information, get authenticated. So now my deployment, GitHub will have access to my Azure subscription and will be able to execute something. Here, since I already have the my ARM template, I'm reusing it, you know, because why should I do something different? But you could definitely have a bunch of Azure CLI or PowerShell or any, you know, execute a script here instead if you prefer. So here what I do is I create a resource group, and then I use the command deployment create. I pass, here I'm just giving it a name to my deployment. I pass the resource group here and the template file. So the template file will be created. So at push, if I'm changing the code, you know, solution should be deployed. And you could also use different credential, and don't forget to log out. But that's pure security. I think you don't need to log out, but I like to log out to make sure, you know, nothing stay in a, you know, just waiting over there. So that's how it will be deployed. And the code here is just the same, like very simple code. If we look inside the demos and we look into function app demo, here I have my simple HTTP trigger. Instead of HTTP trigger 1, I give it a real name. So I said simple HTTP trigger. So those files are kind of configuration for my function app. Function app, that was the container. So this is a few configuration file where you could manipulate and a bunch of stuff. And the information about my function is here inside that one. So if we go again inside, so you could use flat file as information if you want. You have your index.js in JavaScript. That will be where your code is. So we'll have a look. And then you have function JSON if you need any specific configuration for your function. So let's have a look to index. So here, what I did, I just changed the code. So it's the same JavaScript we saw previously, but now I will say, hello, it's still me. So that's the new part. So now what I suggest is I already deployed that because I didn't want to, be waiting for a deployment to execute, but I already deployed that version. So now I want to show you a logic app that I have that call that Azure function, or maybe we could call it ourselves. Do I have the code snippet to do that? Let's call the one that is already done. So I will go in my resource group and this is the logo for logic app. So final, I will go and edit. So here what I did, this is the same logic app, like the same code inside the logic app that we create, except there's a new step here. And I added the Azure function. To add one, you just go there and then you search for function. You have Azure function. I click that and then it will find the Azure function that I have inside my Azure subscription or that I have access. So what I did, I pick the one I was looking for, probably final, and then it's okay, simple HTTP trigger, and I will pass information. So I pass the information, and that's how I got this version here. So yes, delete this version. So that's how I get this. And this time I'm passing information. So I decided, you know what, I will pass the information inside a JSON document. Before, when we test our function, we were passing it to the query string. Now, I'm just to make it different, I'm passing it inside an object because also it's more convenient where you are in a solution, you're passing more information. So here I'm passing the name and salutation. Again, we recognize that little logo. So I'm passing it from that information from the trigger. So we'll create the file just like before and getting a response. So let's test and see if it's working. So we'll get the URL. We'll clean up my other tabs. So open a new one, pasting. I still need to add the object salutation. So voila. And I will say here, and I will say Singapore. I'm always worried when I type a city that I'm making a typo. It's running, of course. Okay, cool, this time faster. Go. So if we look, we have a file, blah, 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 was created. So excellent, that's what we were expecting. If we go back into my OneDrive, we have the file, test, blah, 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 that was created. And if we look inside, we'll have, hello, it's still me, Singapore. So perfect, the message worked. So when I call my logic app, when that I type, when the trigger is fired, the logic app start. It then call the Azure function, passing the information from the context or whatever I want. The Azure function gets spun, execute the code. In this case, it was very simple. It's just building a string. But in both scenarios, it could have been way more complex. It's keeping it simple, so we focus on the tech and not like complexity of the code. So returning the Azure function will return the string, and then the logic app will complete its action, building a file inside the OneDrive and returning a message. So all that was created in a split of a second, and then everything, all the instances were destroyed. So right now, nothing is running again. It's all vanished. So I'm not build anymore. And if we go in Logic App, which tab? Here, no. Too many tabs open. Okay, let's close that. I don't need that one. I don't need that one. Okay, that was the one I'm using. So if I go back to the Logic App, so if I close this designer view, I go back here. If I refresh, I would see at the bottom of the screen that I run that Azure function twice. Earlier today before the stream, just to make sure everything was working, and just now. So we can see, and if I click, I could even see, come on. I will see the workflow and a green check for all information. Here I expand, I will see the information that was passed as input and the output return. So if there's a problem, I could go inside and investigate where was the problem. So very, very convenient. Here it's an example of an Azure function that is not an Azure function, sorry, a logic app that is a little bit more complex. So that's one I use. I will swap. Voila. So that's the one I use for my reading notes. So every Monday I publish my reading notes. I like to read on my Kindle. I don't like to read on the screen. So every good article that I found, I push it to my Kindle, and then I take notes inside my Kindles. I don't know if you knew, but you could take notes, and that's in a file that Kindle called my clippings. So it's just a text file. So I put the text file in my OneDrive, and then when the new file arrives in my OneDrive, this logic app is created. I will parse the file and then call even another logic app, because you could but you could nest different logic app inside. So we'll call this other logic app, will call for every article that I find back the URL, the author information, and at the end will generate a blog post for me with all my notes and the URL, and then I will publish that on my blog. And just for me, a way to keep tracks of what I read. And sometime when people are asking me something, I was like, yeah, I read an article about that. So now I could go back to my blog and, search through the article that I read. So kind of my mini search engine. So very useful. So just an example of, could be a little bit more complex. I'm working on a different version right now that create a container, because I'm using a service to transform HTML page in a Word document to send it to Kindle and stuff like that. So you could do a tons of stuff in there. So that's pretty cool. Now we know a little bit more about Azure Function, Azure Logic Apps. So what are those scenarios? I mentioned a few of them. That reading notes is one of them. So let's try to ignite you with different ideas of how you could use Logic App. Not necessarily just Logic App, but serverless. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm running in my case, I have one Logic App running every Monday that clean up my Azure subscription. But it could be, I want to do exactly that. So every Monday, find the resources, delete the resources. It could be, run a report or something like that. Any kind of schedule thing could be used. You could be calling from an Azure function or it could be the logic app that will be the first one to get triggered, but after that you could call one or the other. Another one, every time a file is added to a blob storage, so maybe I don't know, it's a website and someone is uploading some images, you could, you know, make thumbnail, so reduce the size of those images. Or maybe it's a CSV and you want to update your charts, you know, Power BI and all those things. So you have, every time there's a new files coming in, then you crunch that data, update your pie chart, because, you know, you need a pie chart that is up to date. I also used a logic app recently in a project where we were generating and recording a bunch of videos with our phones. My team and I were like doing a bunch of videos, and some were on Android, other were on iPhone, and the file was not the same. The format of the file, sometimes it was an MP3, an MP4, sometimes it was a MOV, I think. I forgot. Yeah, MOV. And to process down the line, I needed all the file to have the same type, remove complexity. So I built a very simple logic app that was calling media services and converting everything. And I could even change the format if I needed to and stuff like that. So very convenient. It was as soon as we drop a file in a OneDrive or something like that, I was copying in a blob storage and then, starting an instance of media services, crunching the stuff, and I was getting all MP4. And with the MP4, like another process was triggered, and the process was continuing. So that way, every time I was pushing a new file or someone in the team was dropping a file in the OneDrive, the process was executed. And that was very convenient because now, we didn't have to take care, we didn't have to wait, to have Pascal or Julia to start working or trigger or convert, because maybe that person is the only person who has the tools to convert the video. So that was very convenient. So it's just a way to do it. Like I said, you could have a new file when a photo is uploaded. Maybe you have a service where people are updating cat pictures and you want to create thumbnails, so you could do that and have different process. And I realize my font is all misaligned, so sorry about that. I already did this demo. So if you are interested to learn more about Azure Functions, you could go here. There's an excellent Learn module inside the Microsoft Learn. You could go at cloud5minutes.ca, so c5m.ca, figuring out AZ functions. There's a Learn module. It's not very long, and it will help you to see different scenario, get your hands dirty a little bit, and it's very interesting for that. So, you could take a screenshot of that if you're interested, or again, go back in my GitHub and pick the slides, but, just doing a screenshot for this would be good. I still have a little bit of time, so what I could do is I just want to show you different project that I did that are using Azure Function to help you getting inspiration. So I had those in a file here. So if you are interested, I have this one. So let's zoom. Just let's zoom. Voila. So I have a show on the Twitch on the Microsoft Developer Channel twice a week, and in the 4th episode of that show, I was with Jason, and Jason showed us how to build an incident management using Logic App in Azure Function, and it was really interesting. So you could have a look. So Cloud 5 Minutes AAA for All Around Azure, that's the name of the show, episode 4. And what we did is, when you have an error in Azure or something like that, or a lot of, management, you can call a webhook. So we were sending that error notification to a Logic App. that logic app then created a ticket inside Azure DevOps. Assign the person that was up or on service, on duty during that event, because you could have multiple people available depending on the schedule. So, assign a good person. But then just doing that, it was not useful because maybe the person is not, if it's the middle of the night, watching Azure DevOps to see if there's a new ticket assigned to her, and maybe it's urgent. So based on that, the Logic app was also creating a new conversation inside Teams and starting a conversation, putting the information about the ticket and assigning all those things. So the person who was assigned on service receive a notification from team and look at it and could see right away the error, maybe the level of importance, or like the server is rebooting. Fine, I don't need to wake up at the middle of the night. It's just, it will reboot and the service will be up again. Or maybe it's an emergency, like all the API crashed, something hacker system and stuff like that. I need to start working. So it had already the information, could start right away having information clicking. So very, very interesting that was done. It's a video. You can have a look. And there's also a lot of information and links to brings you to a little bit more details on that. Another project that I did was the Azure URL shortener. So, I share a lot of information on all the social media, and sometimes having very, very long URL is not interesting. And of course, it takes characters or space in your message. So having a way to shorten those URL is very interesting. You could use Bitly, you could use, there's plenty of solution, but I was like, I would like to have something that high own, because I would like to see the statistics. I'm interested to know, does the link I share was very popular? Did people click on that or just like the share information but didn't click or stuff like that? So I would like to know a little bit more. So that's why I created that. And I wanted to make it so everybody very simply could have those kind of services. So I create my project. It's available. Let's copy this, switch back to the browser, open that. So it's available in GitHub. And again, it's working with those deploy button. And another thing that I wanted to make it as budget friendly as possible. So it is in C# because I'm more comfortable in C#, and I'm using Azure Functions as a backend. So every time you're calling that, cloud 5 minutes, so c5m.ca, you're calling my Azure function. So it only run by the time to return a URL. So that's pretty convenient. I'm storing everything in a blob storage table, getting the information, returning the long version of the URL, and voila, it's working. And this version right now is using a website, regular website, to have an admin interface. I build, the community here created different interface. So someone created a Flow interface, a SharePoint one, a PowerShell. I need to work this week on the Tiny Blazor admin. That's the new admin that's done in the Blazor, and it's a WebAssembly, so it's only client side. So it will cost mostly nothing, that version. But right now the code is all there, but the one-click deployment doesn't work yet. But it's all there. Community is doing a bunch of stuff. So very interesting project. If you want to get started, learn a little bit more about Azure. If you want to try different things, it's a good project to get started. So you could have it by the Cloud 5-minute project, or GitHub, F Boucher, that's my GitHub, and it's the AZ URL shortener. There's a library that is very, very interesting that contains tons of services, and the serverless library.net. So here you will have a lot of different services and different languages, different type of application, different kind of scenario. You just need to search and you have a lot of information. Most of the time, there's a one-click deployment over there. It's all connected to GitHub, so you could start from there, customize it for your needs. So also very interesting. Get back to the slides now. Just to finish up, I passed right away. Boom. Oh, I had the slides with, there it is. Oh, it was invisible. So feel free. So here are all the links. So if you want to get more information about Azure Function, cloud5minute.ca, AZ Functions. I have another one, AZ Logic App. If you want to know, get that repo where everything was, it's Azure Serverless repo. If again you want to reach out to me, you have questions and that question doesn't pop up right away, you can contact me at fbucheros on all the social media. I will be super happy to answer your questions. And now, if you have any questions, ask them in the chat and I will have a look.
Yes, Frank, there are a couple of questions. So the first one is around, could you please share link of Azure cleanup function here?
If what?
Could you please share link of Azure cleanup function?
Oh yeah, it's in my repo. Let me find it very quickly in my repo. There it is. I will put it in the chat. I'm assuming it's okay.
Okay. Yep.
Boom.
There is
It's called subscription cleaner. It can work with Azure Function or it could work with automation. It's using PowerShell because I was testing the new PowerShell feature of Azure Function back when I wrote that.
Okay. The next one is when do we use GitHub? Any guidelines?
When use GitHub?
GitHub. When do we use GitHub? Kubernetes-based event-driven auto-scaling, and if there are any guidelines.
When do we use? So GitHub is very useful. It's a code repository, right? So anytime, like you shouldn't keep the code only on one server or worse, on your dev machine or at home, your game, dad, brother, sister machine, like you want to code somewhere else. So if something happened to your code, like your machine, the code will be sitting somewhere. So Git, would it be on Bitbucket or GitHub or Azure DevOps? Like it's a repository, it's very useful. So you just push your code over there. You could create private projects. So most of my projects are open source, so people can, see them, collaborate. I like to work with people and like see, because you all see things by your eyes. So sometimes you bring ideas that I didn't think about it. So that's all super cool, and I integrate everything. But sometimes you want to have private repo, so you could create private repo now. It's totally free, so you could use that. And then from there, depending on your type of project, you could be working on the different way to deploy your solution. You don't need to. Maybe you want to just have the code there and do everything manually, and that's totally fine. But sometimes we want automation, and there inside GitHub, it will be the GitHub action. So you could build your own GitHub action to maybe just compile, maybe run some tests, maybe deploy. That based on what you have as process or needs. Guidance, there's a lot of good documentation directly inside GitHub. The first time you will create a GitHub action by clicking the GitHub action. If there's nothing, by default, it shows you a documentation page with videos, with a lot of stuff to get started. I create also a few videos, and there's a lot of people who create blog posts about that, how to get started.
Okay, sorry, I think my pronunciation was a bit misleading. The question was about GitHub, so I put it in the chat. It's the Kubernetes-based event-driven auto-scaling, but maybe it was meant for Ranjit. It's the same one. So the question is, if we are using Azure Functions, we are not worried about auto-scaling, right?
Exactly. So Azure Function will scale automatically. That's the beauty of it. You could limit it also if you want, because if it's scale crazy, then you will pay for it. So maybe you don't care. Maybe you say, you know what, even if I have 100 message coming in, I just want them to be processed. So maybe you could say, you know what, scale up to 2 instances, because I don't care if it takes 3 hours to get processed. But maybe you care and you want to absorb all those messages or event or whatever as soon as possible. So then you put no limits, and you'll have like 15 instances of your Azure function that will process all that information. So it depends what you want. So you could set a max if you want, but otherwise it will just scale, to process everything.
Okay. That's all we had in the chat. Anybody has any question that you would like to ask using your by unmuting yourself? Can we have a session on Azure Service Bus? Yes, we can. I'll try to schedule one. No problem with that. Okay, other than the request for further sessions, is there any other question? What is the most transaction heavy solution you have heard of using Azure Functions or Logic Apps?
Using Azure Function, I did work on a project that was based on a connected car. So you could think a lot of cars, and in IoT, it's tons of messages. So every car was sending like a few dozen of messages. So it was kind of thousands of messages every second. So that was heavy. In Logic App, same thing. You could have a lot of messages. It was an integration project. I cannot describe it too much, but it was an integration service, and we were absorbing a bunch of messages and processing them, scaling again to process all those messages in an integration service. So, yeah. It's very interesting to have those services because they are just running when called. So it's always very convenient for that.
We have one question on the YouTube stream. How much temp space is allocated for each Azure Functions for processing?
For a regular Azure function, forgot, like there's a limit of time. If the process is longer, there's a version of the Azure function called durable function that you could call. So if, for example, you say, I want to process every file of that directory. So you could call one parent function, and that one will call a kind of a child Azure function. So that first one is called an orchestrator, and that one will call different versions. So the process could take days or like hours or whatever, and like it will be working. Otherwise, I forgot, but maybe it's like 5 minutes or something like that. Your regular Azure function needs to run for a short period of time, but I forgot exactly how long it is.
Okay, I think we are done with the questions on YouTube as well as on the Teams chat. Anybody wants to ask one last question by unmuting yourself? We are already 10 minutes over the time, so maybe one last question. If not, then thank you very much, Frank. Thanks for taking time out. I know it's very early for you. So merci beaucoup for taking this opportunity and sharing this session with us. It was very helpful. I hope your day goes very well. Bon journée. And before we close, I would just like to share my screen and take a minute for the upcoming sessions that we have planned. The thing which I spoke just before the session started. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So next week we have how to start your IoT projects. Then the following week, this is currently not published on Meetup yet. I will publish it very soon. So we have Mayur Tendulkar, who will be talking about how to migrate web applications to Azure. And then we have Abhishek Gupta, who will be talking about Go for Azure developers. So as I said earlier, if you have any specific request around Go programming language and what you would like to see on Azure, Abhishek has requested us if you want to see any particular scenario, and feel free to contact me if you want any specific area around Go to be addressed during this session. Then we also have the private link and Azure private DNS, and we will also be having ARM templates on 15th of October. I hope you will join us for all these interesting sessions. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining this, and have a nice day ahead. Good night and stay safe. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.